Hi, this is Rob Sheen with the Source Conference, and I'm here with Caroline Wong, and she's the VP of Security Strategy at Cobalt, and she's going to be speaking next week at the Phoenix Mesa event on February 28th and March 1st. So the title of your talk is "The Only Reason Security Really Matters for DevOps." So DevOps is a fun topic these days, and everybody's starting to think about it in various capacities. And I really liked your abstract, so we wanted to get you in to talk about it. So why don't you start? Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your talk?
Cool. So for me, I've been in the information security field now for 13 years, and I'm always interested in the really basic questions. So I actually start my talk out by saying, first of all, why does DevOps matter? And then I get into, okay, so then why does security matter for DevOps? I talk about some different approaches that people might take, and I provide my own recommendation, primarily based on my experience leading security teams at eBay and Zynga.
So I'm glad you mentioned the Zynga thing. So that was something that jumped out at me from your abstract. You were actually there when they went from 0 to 10 million users on Farmville.
It was a pretty wild time. I joined right after that, so I joined when it was like the the coolest place to be.
Yeah,
Um, but I definitely was there when they had some explosive games, and the reason they could do that from a technology standpoint was because they were a pretty early adopter of Amazon's cloud services. So
mm,
they needed that elasticity because in entertainment, and essentially online video gaming is entertainment, you really never know how successful something's going to be until it happens. So,
right.
from a capacity planning perspective, the cloud was a perfect technology fit.
Yep. Yeah, I mean the cloud is a game changer. It kind of allows for stuff like that to exist when previously you'd have to have $1 zillion in funding to be able to buy all the equipment and hope it's going to work. So how did that crazy experience of dealing with that kind of volume, how did that translate into DevOps for security?
Yeah, so for us, one of the things that we realized right away was that as a security team, we were not in a position to go and tell any of the engineers what to do. That was not going to fly. And so what we did instead was we kind of took the time to really understand, okay, how does game development work at this company? And how can we work with those folks in a way where, first of all, they're going to take a meeting with us. Second of all, they're going to be interested at all in what we have to say. And then we're in a position to advise and to teach them. And we really took quite a high touch approach with pen test teams that were very integrated with the game studios, um, in person, live, hands on threat modeling courses. So when people talk about DevOps, certainly automation is a really big factor that makes DevOps what it is. Security for DevOps, automation comes up a lot, and I have a bit of an unpopular opinion, which is that I think that in order to effectively do security for DevOps, it actually requires quite a high touch, which is the opposite of what you hear a lot, which is to automate everything. I don't actually believe that everything in security can or even should be automated.
Right. Yeah, I would actually agree with you there. I think when people try to automate everything or try to have the technology fix everything, that's when they get themselves into serious trouble and they end up with massive institutional blind spots behind things that they're doing.
Agree.
So what are some of the key differences between the pre-DevOps world and the post-DevOps world? Because there's clearly some major differences.
Yeah, so, in the pre-DevOps world, you've got a waterfall software development lifecycle. You've got these phases of software development that each of them take long enough that it makes sense to put in a security gate. Extensive security reviews can be conducted and approvals can be put in place. The other thing is that in a pre-DevOps world, you have this security mindset of, you know, the organization or the assets you're trying to protect, they're walled in, right? It's an M&M like hard candy shell. soft, gooey center sort of situation. And it's all about preventing the attack from happening and keeping everything out. That model works better in an isolated private data center environment. But with DevOps, what you've got is extensive use of cloud technology, reliance on lots of third-party software components, free and open source software components. And so we've really moved from this sort of isolated situation to an ecosystem where so many different organizations are dependent on each other, and that creates a very different security scenario. One of the things that I like about DevOps and correspondingly the security approach to DevOps is that there's an acknowledgement that incidents will occur and in fact are occurring right now. Some of the coolest DevOps tools that I'm aware of are ones that actually create incidents for teams to practice responding to, because it's such a known thing, it's such an acknowledged thing. So we're no longer trying to prevent the incident and fooling ourselves into believing that an incident's not going to occur. We acknowledge that incidents are occurring all the time, and I think that's a very different mindset.
Yeah, so I like the point about acknowledging that it always happens, because I see so many people that it's like they're offended that there was an incident. It's, and they get punished for there being an incident. It's like it's not realistic, because if somebody wants to get in badly enough, if you know anything about the bad guys, you'll know that they will get in. So I like this idea of assuming it'll happen and then figuring out, all right, now what? So one thing I've noticed though is I started in security back around 1998 or so, and there was kind of a big push back then to get us off of the this big open academic model where everything was connected and shifting towards more of a secured model. What I've been telling people for a while now is that there was this security bus that left the station back around 1998, 2000. And along the way, it's kind of broken down a few times. We've had some flat tires we had to get up and fix, but it's still been kind of limping along over time. But there are a bunch of people that never got on the bus.
Yes.
So there's basically, I see it a lot with DevOps now, because I teach classes where I talk to people and find out what they're doing. And the ones that aren't doing DevOps yet are so far behind the curve and so far up to their eyeballs in technical debt that I don't know how they're ever going to catch up. Do you have any tips for those guys? Because that's a lot of them.
Yeah, it is a lot, right? So Puppet is an organization that releases this State of DevOps report. They've been doing it for 4 years now, and the 2017 version said that of their survey respondents, only 27% are actually doing DevOps today. So there's tons of talk about it. The reality is there's a ton of organizations that are not doing it yet. I think your comment with regards to getting on the bus is a really important one, because there's this idea that traditionally security has had this position where they could sort of tell people what to do. And then now the idea is that, well, in DevOps, things move so fast, security can no longer sort of, come into the room and say, no, you can't do that. It's got to be a different conversation. I actually subscribe to the belief that we as security people never had that right in the first place, right? Who gives us the authority to come in and tell people what they can or cannot do? I think that often, so I've got a toddler, and when I tell my daughter what she can or cannot do, I get different responses, right? It's human nature. People don't like being told what to do. But if I sort of like acknowledge how she feels, explain the situation, maybe tell her about some like real life consequences, then even at almost 3 years old, she's more willing to listen. So one of the things I like a lot about DevOps and the way that it's shifting culturally is that for security people to even have a seat at the table in a DevOps world, I think there's got to be trust. And there are ways to gain and build that trust, and there are ways to destroy it. And I think one of the ways to destroy it is when you come into the room and you say, you cannot do this thing that you want to do. I think another way to destroy trust is when you come in and you say, hey, we ran this automated security tool. I'm gonna give you this pile of 300 findings. Good luck, and I'll see you later. I think it's a completely different conversation when you say, look, we've got this really highly skilled pen test team, and we want them to work with your development teams to try and find security vulnerabilities in the application. We want to work with you to fix those. We want to work with you to prevent those in the future. I think that's a different discussion, because I think that developers and engineering teams, they want their code to be secure. They want their product to be as awesome as it can be. And I think if security teams are positioning themselves in such a way that they're saying to engineering teams, look, I'm curious and I want to listen to you and I want to understand how you work and understand how I can help you, then I think that can go a long way.
Awesome. So, all right, I have one left. I was thinking of leaving it till the conference, but I'll ask it to you now. You mentioned the NISF cybersecurity framework in your abstract, and how you've taken the traditional identify, prevent, detect, respond, recover, and simplified it down to 3, which is identify, prevent, react.
Yep.
So I'm gonna throw out one little challenge here for you.
Cool.
My challenge is this: a lot of folks seem to only do one of those 3 things, and it's react.
Yeah.
So by simplifying it down to those 3 things, how do we kind of make sure that they at least do the identify and prevent parts first?
Yeah. So I think it's super cool that you asked that question. So I actually, of all of them, I actually think that identify is the most important one. I think that if you don't know what you're trying to protect and how it works and how it got put together and what's going on with it, how could you possibly think that you'd be in a position to be able to prevent bad things from happening and to protect those assets if you don't even know, what they are or various important attributes about them. And I think that's kind of what leads to so much emphasis, really out of necessity, on the reaction part. So in my talk at Source Mesa Phoenix next week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about these 3 categories of security techniques: identify, prevent, and react. And I'm going to share a couple stories from my background about specifically how we did that in various environments.
Great, that sounds awesome. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation next week, and hopefully, if you guys see this online, then you'll want to come and join us for this conversation. That's one of the nice things about Source, is you actually get to hang out and chat with the speakers about these topics. So we're looking forward to it. So I'll see you all next week. Source Phoenix Mesa on February 28th and March 1st.